In this video, we're going to learn a little bit more about minor scales. In the last video, we learned how to write minor scales. We noticed that each one we learned uses the same notes as a major scale that we learned previously. In this video, we'll learn more about the minor key and its scale. What about the various names for the scale degrees? You know, tonic, dominant, subdominant, and all of that. For the most part, they're the same, but with one exception. Scale degree 7 in major is called the leading tone. With the half-step lead-in to the tonic, it's designed to emphasize the resolution back to 1. So, there's the leading tone to tonic, and you hear that strong pull to the tonic. In minor, it's a whole step, which doesn't resolve as strongly as that half step. So we don't call that one a leading tone, that's scale degree 7, but instead we call it a subtonic, which literally means the note under the tonic. So just to show you the E minor scale, or these notes. Okay, notice that from scale degree 7 back to 1, or scale degree 8, whichever way you want to write it, that's a whole step. Or in other words, these notes here, that's a whole step. So this one is called the subtonic. So the next issue, what if we want that strong motion from 7 to 1? Composers decided that they can raise scale degree 7 a half step so that it simulates the same 7 to 1 that a major scale has. For example, in E minor, we can raise scale degree 7 from D natural to D sharp. When we do that, we're back to calling it a leading tone. Got it? In other words, if scale degree 7 is a whole step below the tonic, it's a subtonic. If it's a half step below the tonic, it's a leading tone. Let me show you that. So here we are with our E minor scale. And now here for scale degree 7, we're going to raise that to D sharp. So as a scale, you hear that strong pull over there. And if I were to play chords, that's with a leading tone. What would it sound like without a leading tone? You can hear the qualitative difference between leading tone and subtonic. This fixes one problem, but it creates another. So now the distance from 6 to 7 is larger than a whole step. It's actually a step and a half, or 3 half steps altogether. So sometimes a composer will raise both 6 and 7 to smooth this out. So in E minor, C sharp and D sharp might be raised. Let me show you. So over here between C natural and D sharp, you can hear that that's larger than a whole step. So what a composer does instead, and I'll leave that first one up there just for comparison, we'll now raise this to C sharp and keep the D sharp. So now we don't have a half step anymore there, but we don't have a step and a half there. We've made all of those whole steps. often use that going up, and sometimes cancel those going down. So this means that we really have three versions of the minor scale. Minor scales are certainly high maintenance. The first version, the one that we learned in the last video that uses the whole, half, whole, half, whole sequence, is sometimes called the natural minor scale. The version with 7 raised to become a leading tone is called the harmonic minor scale, and it's largely because we'll use this when we start introducing chords that harmonize melodies, and we like to have the chords that use the leading tone in order to help emphasize the tonic. Finally, the version that raises scale degree 6 along with scale degree 7 is called the melodic minor scale. Because it smooths out the melody once we decide that we want to have a leading tone. And finally, what about solfege syllables? The ones that differ from major scales have different syllables. Consider the notes of G major versus G minor. That's G major. And that's G minor. We'd already talked about the major key solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So we have to change the notes that are different. We're not going to give them the same solfege. So in minor, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. This is all more advanced than the first work we did with minor scales. For now, just focus on the natural minor scale, but we wanted to introduce the idea that minor keys are not content to use just those notes. Often there are good reasons to alter some of the pitches. You'll get to more of this advanced work shortly, but it makes sense to at least explain right now the ways in which minor keys and scales are different. In our classes, we'll cover this material all over again, so don't feel you'll be behind if you don't absorb all of this. But if you want to get ahead, then learn what we have in this video as well.